Thinkers is LO3 Reasoners podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Thursday, July 27th, 2017. Yeah, I was just going to be talking about one area. It's in reference to the city of Baltimore wants to do a mandatory gun law referendum on sentencing if you carry a gun near 1,000 feet from a school, church, or a park. That area I have to disagree with because it's considered to be a victimless crime law. And of course, they use it for, if you use it for a tent, it's like 5 years. So in that area, that's a different ball game. So I can mainly focus on that, on the Baltimore's gun law referendum. I believe it did pass. Took keeping tabs on it, but a lot of friction has occurred with the folks over there. And I know there was a split too, not unanimous, but majority. But majority, a couple of them were boldly opposed it because the city of Baltimore, there's a lot of issues, economic issues going on over there, and the drug wars and all that stuff. It's just a real shame. And how the mayor and the police commissioner Davis and Delegate Kurt Anderson and a few others would need tougher firearm laws. It's more like, hey, let's enslave the honorable people of our city. And I address this in good faith. So I'm going to be talking about this and how is it still considered to be unconstitutional and what you folks can do in that town. And I'll be very sincere. Baltimore has a real beautiful history. It has its dark sides like every other community in the United States. Has its ordeals, falters, and so forth. But at the time they had the riots over there, many of the people in Baltimore called out the protesters and rioters that were outsiders. They were trying to protect, and the people of Baltimore trying to protect their city from being very destructive, being very totally destructive. So this is how I look at people in general. You got your beautiful folks everywhere you go. Too many complaints about the city sucks. It's not because they had a bad experience. But it doesn't mean everyone in that town are bad folks. So I'll be mainly talking about those articles and how it contradicts Maryland's Constitution. And believing that stuff they don't want you to know. And, like I said, what can be done. So, let's begin. A little bit mellowed right now, so that's what I have to say here. This came out a couple days ago from the Baltimore Sun. Baltimore City Council Committee guts proposal to create mandatory sentence for gun offenders. Ian Duncan wrote this a couple days ago. A Baltimore City Council committee agreed Tuesday to gut legislation originally designed to impose a mandatory 1-year sentence on people who illegally carry guns, amending measures to set tight limits on when it would apply. The Judicial and Legislative Investigation Committee voted 5-2 in advance to amend bill to the full council. The panel moved to the watered-down bill amid contentious 6.5-hour hearing, which at one point lapsed into total chaos as members of the public clashed with police inside the council chamber. The proposal has become a focal point in the debate over what to do about the record homicide rate in Baltimore this year. Supporters say it will be a useful tool to curb the violence. while opponents say the city risks returning to harsh crime control policies of earlier decades. But what emerged from the committee late Tuesday was a fairly minor piece of legislation. The committee unanimously adopted a pair of amendments that would make a mandatory sentence apply on a second offense or if someone was carrying a gun in connection with the crime against a person or property. Existing state laws already provide a mandatory 1-year term on a second handgun possession offense. They also require a 5-year mandatory sentence for using guns in connection with violent crimes or drug dealing. The council bill would add a mandatory $1,000 fine. Councilman John Bullock considered a key swing vote offered one of the amendments. He said later that the changes Assange has qualms about supporting the bill. If his support holds, the measure would have 8 votes needed to pass the full council. My concerns were the impact it would have on first-time offenders and people who are not committing any crimes of violence, he said. And I have to agree with Councilman Bullock on this. If there's no victim, how is that a crime? I'll continue here. Councilman Eric Costello, the committee chairman, said the bill still represented a commitment on the part of the council to fighting crime, but he said he was disappointed with the changes to the measure. It is not as strong as I would like, but that's the legislative process, he said. We have to compromise to get things done. Please. This bill could be amended further on the floor of the City Council, where it is now scheduled for a preliminary vote next month. The heightened emotions and the debate erupted when Costello invited members of the public to testify before the committee. He called a group of doctors first, angered other people who felt they were being made to wait before having the chance to speak. Yeah, so they're going to get experts in there, and the folks, the people who live in that city are just effing dumb. There's a figure of speech, allegedly, okay? When Costello asked the police to remove a man, some in the audience left their seats and confronted officers on the floor of the council chambers. "We were here first," people shouted from the balcony. A 27-year-old man and a 29-year-old man were arrested, police said. One of them was taken to the hospital complaining of chest pains. Police did not release their names. Through mid-July, more than 500 people have been shot this year in the city, while gun arrests are down 31%. Police announced that the latest homicides during the course of the hearings bring the city's total for the nearly 200. In a response to the surge in violence, Mayor Catherine Poe, Police Commissioner Ken Davis, and City Council President Bernard C. Jack Young backed the bill, which have required a mandatory 1-year sentencing for illegal possession in much of the city, within 100 yards of a school, park, church, public building, or other public place of assembly. So what they're actually supporting is criminal invitation zones. But the rest of you who are honorable are peasants under their wing. Supporters say they want to remove the discretion of judges to allow gun offenders to return to the streets too quickly. After the committee vote, Davis said he would wait to review the final version of the legislation, but cautioned against adapting something so weak it becomes virtually ineffective and become basically a paperweight. Poe and Young could not be reached for comment. Testifying before the committee Tuesday, Davis has reeled off a list of names of men he said received short sentences after being convicted in gun cases, then went on to kill someone or were killed themselves. He called illegally carrying a gun an act of pre-murder. And that sounds like a thought criminal. But Davis also said the department enforcement strategy wouldn't change should the bill pass. It isn't about mass incarceration or locking up more people. It's about holding the right people accountable, he said. Opponents argue that the mandatory sentences are not effective and result in people being treated unfairly, especially if they are black. Councilman Brandon Scott, one of the two committee members to vote against the bill, said he couldn't support the measure until he sees a detailed plan from city leaders for how to fight crime. He said the council needed to continue to insist on a comprehensive strategy to deal with violence. Labor and community groups held a rally outside City Hall before hearing alongside 5 members of the City Council to outline their case against the legislation. This would be a malpractice as legislators. If we knowingly passed the bill, we would know would harm our communities, City Council Christopher Burnett said. Baltimore police said gun offenses are too lightly punished in Baltimore. In the past year and a half, said 60% of 605 gun offenders had more than half of their sentence suspended. More than 100 people were arrested at least twice on handgun charges during that time. 7 people were arrested 3 times, according to police. Davis testified Tuesday that the average defendant in the gun case had been previously arrested more than 9 times. He cited an example of a defendant with 27 arrests. How many of them were convictions? Supporters of the original proposal note that prosecutors would still get to decide whether it was appropriate to bring a mandatory minimum charge and could opt to drop it to pursue different charges. State's Attorney Marilyn J. Mosby did not submit testimony in either favor or against the bill. If this bill passes, it will be a tool used with our discretion for violent offenders, Karen Brace, a spokesman for Mosby, said in an email. So the reporters Kevin Rector, Luke Broadwater, Michael Bryce Sadler contributed to this article. So like I said before, if you use it for violent intent or criminal intent, you deserve harsher sentences. Like in Florida, this thing called 10-20 life. They don't play. If you're going to use it to commit a crime, you're going to get hardcore sentencing. But something like this, the problem is, if you actually carry, you can get arrested. And how that supersedes the people of Baltimore's natural-born rights? It doesn't. But so I'm just going to continue on here. Just get a couple of articles. This one came from Hot Air. Jazz Shaw came out yesterday. Baltimore guts out the one good gun law it could have had. And it's interesting what it says here. It is a rare day when you see me cheering for states or cities passing new gun laws because they generally involve stripping law-abiding citizens of their Second Amendment rights. But that's not always the case. In the city of Baltimore, now frequently known as the murder capital of the country, the city council was on the verge of passing gun-related law this week, which would actually do some good. The proposed legislation would have imposed stiff new penalties, including significant jail time for those caught using illegal weapons in the commission of a crime, which I have to agree. All right. So how did that work out? At the 11th hour, they watered the bill down to the point of the irrelevance, of course. Baltimore Sun. A Baltimore City Council committee agreed Tuesday to gut legislation originally designed to impose a mandatory 1-year sentence on people who illegally carry guns, amending the measure to set tight limits on when it would apply. The Judicial and Legislative Investigation Committee voted 5-2 to advance the amended bill to the full council. The panel moved to water down the bill amid a contentious 6.5-hour hearing, at which one point lapsed into chaos as members of the public clashed with police inside the council chamber. The proposal has become a focal point in the debate over what to do about the record homicide rate in Baltimore this year. Supporters said it would be a useful tool to curb violence, while opponents said the city risked returning to harsh crime control policies of earlier decades. The Sun correctly described what emerged from the committee meeting as a relatively minor piece of legislation. Instead of mandatory minimum 1-year sentence for any illegal gun violation, either carrying without a permit in certain cases or using one in the commission of a crime, they moved out to only apply on a second offense. And there is also a loophole which allows the state's attorneys, Marilyn Mosby in this case, who I'm not sure you remember from the Freddie Gray debacle, to use her own discretion as to whether or not the mandatory minimum would be applied. Here's the thing. There's already a state law in place which has a mandatory minimum for a second gun offense and 5 years for using a gun in violent crimes and drug crimes. As all this legislation is going to wind up adding a $1,000 fine. The original bill might have gotten gang members packing illegal iron off the street safer. This is nothing but an avoidance of the problem and a return to the status quo. So how did this happen? Why would people living in the shadow of gun crime rate, which has already racked up more than 500 shootings, this year turn their nose up at some tougher laws? Here's why. Counsel John Bullock considered a key swing vote, offered one of the amendments. He said later the charges assuaged his qualms in supporting the bill. If his support holds, measures would have the eight votes needed to pass to full council. My concerns were the impact it would have on first-time offenders, people who are not committing any crimes of violence, he said. Problem is, it looks like they try to put everything all in one batch. That is the issue. And technically, to be very respectful, it should have never really occurred. If you're finding gangbangers wandering around with unregistered guns, given current murder situation, wouldn't you want to get them off the streets even if they don't have a previous gun crime on their rap sheet? Most of the time, I know that new gun laws involve making it harder to legally own a gun. What we actually need is enforcement of existing laws and tougher ones like we almost had in Baltimore to go after the real problem. That would be people who are not law-abiding and are buying their guns on the black market and shooting up civilians. Baltimore had a chance to show up. They were serious about doing precisely that this month, and they completely bailed out of their obligation to protect the citizens of the city. And, they have some key points in that area. But like I said, too, with the whole thing on the other aspect, like the whole permits and so forth, I'm not really too keen of because it's considered registration to the state. Like, just an example in Florida with the concealed weapons permit. It is more of a privilege, not a right. It violates natural law. So, however, when it comes to the crimes, yeah, it has to, you gotta be hardcore when it comes to weapons using for criminal intent. And I know I'm like rambling or repeating myself, so I apologize for that. Well, I'm gonna hit this next one here from guns.com. Have their little view on that. And it says here, came out yesterday, Baltimore Council waters down proposed mandatory minimum for illegal guns. Chris Eager. After a public hearing degenerated into arrest in Baltimore on Tuesday, an amended draft ordinance designed to bring strict sentencing for some found with guns passed out of the committee. The proposal, which originated with Mayor Catherine Paul's office, was passed 5-2 by the Judiciary Committee after hours of sometimes emotional hearings were briefly interrupted by the arrest of two people found in melee as reported by local media. The measure originally aimed to criminalize the carry or transport of a handgun, either openly or concealed within 100 yards of a public building, park, church, school, or other place of public safety, with a mandatory penalty of 1 year imprisonment and a $1,000 fine. That's the victimless crime referendum. All right. As modified this week, first-time offenders will not be eligible for the mandatory sentence except in cases where the legal handgun they possessed was used in the crime. Also, the state's attorney's office could use discretion in charging individuals with violation of the city ordinance should it become law, skirting the issue entirely. However, even if diluted from the original language proposed by Poe, the bill is facing serious opposition for some on the council. Prior to this week, hearings, slightly less, half of the 14-member body was in favor of the measure, and few outliners remained unconvinced. Brandon Scott, who represented the 2nd District, told WJZ he staunchly opposed the proposal. The amendment makes the bill easier to stomach. It still doesn't change the fact that I have disagreed with this bill in its entirety and its principles of mandatory minimums. Scott said, in addition, the ordinance has drawn fire from civil rights advocates with attorney Joshua Pence, penning a letter to the city warning a number of legal pitfalls resulting from the patchwork of new gun-free zones and arbitrary language. The measure is expected to be taken up by full council on August 14th. So right there, it is going to be very interesting. Something to really look at. Because, like I said, if there's no victim, how is that a crime? That's the way I'm real critical of. Use it for other areas, violate another space. I support harsher sentencing with judicial due process. Everyone's got to really look at this a lot broader than what it is. And even some of the so-called experts in there try to use this used sales pitch rhetoric. And even some of the people in the committee opposed it because it should be it's like more of a patch-up job, which I agree with. Baltimore has some real social economic issues. To be very sincere, Maryland needs to end the drug war in their state. That would be the first step. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's not going to be perfect, but that would be the first step. Because Maryland was actually the first state to nullify the Prohibition Amendment of alcohol. They refused to support it. Just a little history lesson. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to add a video, which I seen yesterday by The Real News. And there's a decent job about residents fight back against arrival of tough crime strategy. Because they're a lot more concerned because it could affect them as well. And they're honorable folks. They can get thrown in jail for one of those proposals. I can look at this here. The Declaration of Rights under the Constitution of Maryland. And I like the preamble. It says here, we, the people of the state of Maryland, grateful to Almighty God, our civil and religious liberty, in taking into our serious consideration the best means of establishing a good constitution in the state for the sure foundation with permanent security thereof declare. And we can hit Article 2 of this document. It says that the Constitution of the United States and the laws made, or which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, and shall be the supreme law of the state. And the judges of the state and all the people of the state are and shall be bound thereby. Anything in this Constitution or law of the state is to the contrary notwithstanding. Interesting, right? And we can hit Article 4. Sometimes they try to use the whole states' rights things about Article 3, which is pertains to the 10th Amendment. And this is Article 4, that the people of the state have the sole and exclusive right of regulating the internal government and police thereof as a free, sovereign, and independent state. So, based on the reports, they were letting doctors in and the so-called experts, but the other folks been deprived on hearing their voice. So I can't blame them for calling them out. So they got that. You guys in that city have that power. So we'll go on here to Article 17. That retrospective law punishing acts committed before the existence of such laws, and by them only declared criminal, are oppressive, unjust, incompatible with liberty. Wherefore, no ex post facto law ought to be made, nor any retrospective oath or restriction be imposed or required. You can consider this referendum on the 1,000 feet carrying without committing a crime, without using any criminal intent, could be considered a ex post facto law. All right, on Article 17. Let's hit 19. That every man, for any injury done to him is in his personal property, ought to have remedy by the course of the law of the land, and ought to have justice and right freely without sale, fully without any denial, or speedily without delay according to the law of the land. So, to be very sincere, if government of the city of Baltimore violates your space on this victimless proposal, you're considered they have you considered an injured party and have remedy. So I could tell you this: Title 42, U.S. Code, Section 1983. You can be compensated if your constitutional rights or natural born rights have been deprived. Okay, so you could add that to your memo. And we could hit 19. No, I already did 19. And we could hit 28. That a well-regulated militia is the proper and natural defense of a free government. What is a militia? Individuals like you and I are armed, trained, and ready for any means necessary. And let's just look what militia means under Black's Law Dictionary, because it is essential to know about these areas. And we'll just have to, it's going to take a little bit of a while, but I will get that about what a militia is. Let me see. Oh, hold on here. All right, militia. I love they have it in big capital letters. This is legaldictionary.org, by the way. Let's see what they have to say. Ooh. Yeah, I don't know why. Do it one more time. Come on, damn it. Wow. They don't really have it in here, I see, huh? That's a real effing shame. I'll try another way of making this happen. But yeah, so you could actually look at all that. All right, and this is essential. I'm very disappointed. So we'll just try to find it here. And what I'm going to do is continue on. We'll go by the freedictionary.com under legal. Militia is a group of private citizens who train for military duty in order to be ready to defend their state or country in times of emergency. And militia is distinct from regular military forces, which are units of professional soldiers maintained in both war and peace by the federal government. Well, you have state militias as well. The United States early National Guard serves as the nation's militia. The funny thing about it, they're trying to manipulate the whole National Guard thing. A militia is a lot more than that. So it's actually private folks, too, are ready to go and be trained and all that good stuff. The National Guard, I don't consider that being militia. I'm sorry. That's another governmental entity, federal governmental entity, with all due respect. But I'll leave that as is. So I'm just going to hit. Next one here is 44. And 44 says here, the provisions of this Constitution of the United States and of the states apply as well in time of war and as a time of peace, and any departure therefore or violation thereof under the plea of necessity and any other plea subverts of good government and tends to anarchy and despotism. So can this look certain laws in Baltimore or even Maryland or can create despotism on the people's rights? All right, and even right here too, the 45, this enumeration of rights shall not be construed to impair or deny others retained by the people. So right there, your natural born rights are guaranteed, and another prima facie just cause of this so-called mandatory gun law, victimless version, the referendum, is illegal. guaranteed illegal. And we can use 47 about the victim of crime. So, hey, if the government violates their space under those areas, they commit a crime against you. So that's 47. A victim of crime shall be treated by agents or of the state with dignity, respect, or sensitivity during all phases of the criminal justice process. But that'll be subsection A. But the whole thing is, my friend, in Baltimore, even Maryland, you have these declaration of rights. They can't say they're smarter than you because you have originated right from the people and founded Compact only initiated solely for the good of the whole. They have, at times, the inalienable rights to alter, reform, or abolish their form of government in such a matter that may be deemed expedient. That's Article 1 of the Declaration of Rights. Okay, so I just want to add that to it. The whole thing is actually null and void when it comes to carrying peacefully. All right, that's the big difference. And there's one thing the mayor and a few others in there may have breached. You could say they breached their oath of office, because sometimes they say you can't use the Bill of Rights, federal Constitution on a state level, which is understandable. I'm not going to argue with that. However, you can get them on their oath of office. Article 1 of it's called Elective Franchise. Section 9. Every person elected or appointed to any office of profit or trust under this Constitution or under laws made pursuant thereto shall, before he enters upon the duties of such office, take and subscribe the following oath or affirmation. I, in your name, do swear or affirm, as this case may be, that I will support the Constitution of the United States and that I will be faithfully bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland and support the Constitution and laws thereof, and that I will do the best of my skill and judgment, diligently and faithfully, without partiality or prejudice, execute the office of, according to the Constitution and laws of the state, and if a governor, senator, member of the House of Delegates, or judge, that I will not directly or indirectly receive the profits of or any other profits from any office during the terms of my acting as, boom. It was originally Article 1, Section 6, but it got changed November 7th, 1978. I was 10 years old at the time. Wow. So, right there, you can get them on breaching their oath of office. And impeachment is going to be a real pain in the neck. And they don't even have a recall law in Maryland, period. I have looked it up. So that's like the Commonwealth, they call it. I think it's called the Commonwealth of Maryland. I could be wrong. I could be mistaken. So it is very disturbing. All right. And what's interesting when I was watching that video, I like when Kurt Anderson talked about, oh, well, they have, if you bring a gun into the airplane, you get 3 years. But how come we don't have that for Baltimore? You see right there, he's a revenue. He sounds like more Delegate, and Kurt Anderson sounds more of a, hey, let's make money off of victims' crimes. And, of course, Kevin Davis talking about the homicide rates. He supports these tougher gun bills, this gun bill, especially the victimless version of it. So the question is I have for them, are the police in Baltimore or the state of Maryland obligated to protect an individual? And it's right here. It's Maryland Code, Courts and Judicial Proceedings 5-52. The statute 5-22. Excuse me, 22. I just from the lawserver.com, and there's links on here. You could check it out. And there's no actual updates or anything like that. So, yeah, so it's the same thing. So it's nothing new at all. Just making sure I got everything up to date. And as it reads here of the code, A, immunity of the state is not waived under Statute 12-104 of the state government, Article 4, punitive damages, interest before judgment, claims that arise from the combatant activities of the state militia during the state of emergency, a tortious act of omission of state personnel that subsection 1 or extra subsection 1 is not within the scope of the public's duties to the state or personnel, or 2 is made with malice or gross negligence. 5, a claim of an individual arising from a single incident or occurrence that exceeds $200,000, or 6, cause of action that law specifically prohibits. State personnel, as defined on Statute 12-101, the state government article, are immune from suit in courts of the state and from liability in tort for a tortious act or omission that is within the scope of the public duties of the state personnel and is made without malice, gross negligence, and for which state or its units have waived immunity under Title 12, Subtitle 1 of the state government article, even if the damages exceeds the limits of waiver. So, and it says here, C, scope of public duties of state personnel, which includes but not be limited to 1, any authorized or state-owned vehicle or by state personnel, including but not limited to commuting, 2, and from place of employment, and 2, service to third parties performed by state personnel as defined by Statute 12-101, the state government article, in the course of participation in the approval, clinic, training, or academic program. D, and contract action under Title 12, Subtitle 2 of the state government article in the state and offers and units not liable for punitive damages. So it's interesting about the whole proceedings. Contract, a legal agreement, what that becomes binding when signed. 2, damages, money paid by defense to successful plaintiffs in civil cases to compensate the plaintiffs for their injuries. 3, including by the way of illustration and not by the way of limitation. C, state means Baltimore. Tort, a wrong, civil wrong or breach of the duty to another person is outlined by law. A very common tort is negligent operation of a motor vehicle that results in property damage or personal injury in an automobile accident. So based on this, okay, when it comes to police protection, it's a myth. You can't get punitive damages. So there's this thing called sovereign immunity and tort liability. That's what really comes down to it. So this is why they don't have faith in the people of Baltimore. They believe all you folks are criminals and slaves. They like to rule on you. They want to believe that you're so naive and pathetic. Yeah, I can say pathetic because that government are parasites in society. Okay, so I just to make that an example. This is very treacherous for the folks in Baltimore. And what can you do? You say you can't do anything. Well, screaming and yelling is not going to get you anywhere. I was watching that video from Real News. One guy was like flinging the podium on the floor and all that, and just cursing. You get angry. There's nothing wrong getting angry. It can't happen. But information war, you got to be methodical. Get mad, but be methodical. The information war is there. You could make a difference. And here's one of the things you can do. Of course, you can vote those bastards out. You can't. Impeachment is no guarantees, okay, because they a lot more in the same Mickey Mouse Club. However, clog the system because you're entitled to face the judgment of your peers, which is guaranteed under Article 5A of Maryland's Declaration of Rights. So I'm going to put that on my footnotes so you folks can read it yourselves. Or if you're in a potential juror, on cases like this or any other victimless crime laws or laws that you believe it was poorly implemented, you can use jury nullification. And usually I post stuff on Fully Informed Jury Association. However, I found this one site called Flex Your Rights. And I met this, and it was funny, there's a photo on here. They said, what is jury nullification? There's a photo of this person here named Julian Hacklin. I've seen him. I met this man. He's very cool. An old man, an elderly gentleman. God bless his soul, man. He had a sign on jury information. He passed out pamphlets from FIJA or Fully Informed Jury Association. Tell people information, their rights that the judge won't tell you. So this is what jury nullification is. For for the folks in Baltimore and Maryland and beyond, okay? During a typical criminal trial, the judge will issue a set of jury instructions. The judge will tell the jury that they must set aside any personal beliefs and reach a verdict based solely on the facts presented at a trial. But sometimes juries disregard these instructions and acquit defendants who clearly broke the law. They might do this because they think the law itself is unjust or they think it's being wrongly applied to the defendant, i.e., punishment doesn't fit the crime. When this occurs, juries have engaged in practice of jury nullification, while judges and prosecutors make effort to weed out rogue jurors. The history of the jury is repleted with examples of courageous jury nullification. For example, English jurors refused to convict William Penn when the government prosecuted him for practicing his Quaker religion. Colonial jurors acquitted John Peter Zenger, who was arrested for publishing remarks critical of the royal governor. Northern jurors refused to convict abolitionists accusing or violating the Fugitive Slave Act. Today, juries with misgiving about the war on drugs have refused to convict medical marijuana defendants. Why I haven't heard of any jury nullification before, despite this extensive history of modern judges mostly forbid any mention of jury nullification in the courtroom. You know why? Because it will hurt their revenue. This has happened part of an obscure Supreme Court decision. In 1995, the court ruled that Spaff versus the U.S. that jurors do have the power to nullify the law. But the ruling also stated that judges are not required to inform the jury of this. As a result, judges and prosecutors have exploited Spaff to forbid any mention of jury nullification from the courtroom. That's why defendants should make those statements about that. Because I know you try to have the defense attorney say it, they can be condemned, but you can just speak that one time right in front of the jury. You're the most powerful ones in the courtroom. You plant those seeds. Even though modern juries are kept in the dark about this right, jury nullification finds its moments in the spotlight. Here are links to the most important jury nullifications, how the guys, thinkers, news, and various YouTube videos. And there's plenty of them here. Rich Paul is appealing his 81-year prison sentence for selling pot. From Vice, nullify the war on drugs. Mark Thornton, nullification jury secret weapon, gets harsh sentencing by the nation. Fully informed jury association. And there's a big list, goes on and on. Of course, you got more important op-eds, Time op-eds, Rise of the Wire. So there's a lot of good stuff here. Other cool jury nullification stuff. Guys Serving as a Juror by Clay Conrad. Camden is L28, which is a documentary. And it goes on. Of course, Ron Paul's on here. And, of course, you got Jury Nullification, The Evolution Doctrine by Clay Conrad. All right, and of course, Let's Get It Free, A Hip-Hop Theory of Justice by Paul Butler. That's right. And The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarcerations Under the Age of Color Blindness, an essay on a trial by jury by Lanzier Spooner. So I'm going to add the footnotes to this show because even though they may pass this on the 14th, doesn't mean they win. That's what's great of our justice system. Our republic has a 3-voting system. You vote in polls, grand jury, trial jury. And I know according to your Declaration of Rights, Article 5, it states you have 12 jurors. Actually, in civil proceedings, right of a jury is preserved until at least 6. Notwithstanding common law, England noting prohibits the trial by jury of 12. So you can do 12 as well. So 6 to 12. That's for civil. But criminal is 12. So I say, you know what, man? Make it stick, clog the system, drive the city of Baltimore crazy. Because you know why? Without you folks, they're nothing. And one more thing I'm going to add, which I did send a tweet to Mayor Poe at Mayor Poe 50 and the city of Baltimore, JPFO video, No Guns for Negroes. So you get asked a question to those individuals that are for this certain bill. Are you pro-slavery? Pro-involuntary servitude? Throw that back at them. Intellectual ammunition is fantastic. And you don't have to scream and yell. As long as you have it on his face, you just give him a big smile and you say it with love and finesse. That drives him crazy. Trust me, I've done it. It drives those bastards crazy. So, that is it. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you send me something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address this, your correspondences with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Scene.life, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, Patreon.com/LokiLucky3. If you want to support me, $5, $2, $1 a month, doesn't matter. That would be greatly appreciated. Or you can email me at LokiLuck3, number 3, at gmail.com. Or to encrypted folks, LokiLuck03, those are both numbers, 03 at protonmail.com. Okay, well, that's all for now. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Till next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.